Welcome to the Mommy on a Mission podcast. I'm Mariana, your host and the #1 best-selling author of Mommy on a Mission, a guide towards healing, self-discovery, and walking in confidence. As a dedicated life coach, wife, mom, yaya, and most importantly, daughter of the King, I am passionate about empowering multifaceted women just like you. In each episode, we dive deep into transformative topics that help you reignite your passion and purpose. My unique approach is designed to help you overcome the fear of external expectations and create the space and time you need for both increased job satisfaction and personal growth. Join me on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment as we explore practical strategies, inspiring stories, and actionable insights. Together, we'll navigate the complexities of life and emerge stronger, more confident, and truly aligned with our deepest desires. Welcome to the Mommy on a Mission podcast, your go-to resource for living a more purposeful and fulfilling life. So grab your taza of café y vamos a platicar. Well, hello, and thank you all for joining me today on Mommy on a Mission podcast. As you know, our podcast is all about empowering women, but not just that. It's also about assisting you and helping you and guiding you so that you can become a woman who is transformed and can walk in the purpose that God has called you in. And so, just like any other day, we're here having a conversation and just really letting our hair down and just letting loose and just allowing for God to just guide this conversation. So girlfriend, if you're here this morning and you're listening, we just want to say thank you for joining us today. And I say us because I have my friend, my sister in Christ, someone who I just deeply admire, Miss LaToya Chrisman. LaToya is a pastor. She is a Christian minister, counselor, and she also she has her own ministry. She's an author. This woman does it all. And I am just so blessed and honored to have her here with me this morning. So if you're ready to have a candid conversation, then I ask that you grab your cup of coffee and let's dive into this conversation. LaToya, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. So listen, if you did not get to attend the She's Bold Women's Conference in May, I'm just going to say that it was powerful.
Yes.
It was powerful. You kicked it off, LaToya. You kicked it off. You opened it up. You were inviting. And even after the event, I just heard how many women were impacted by your story, how they were impacted by just what you were preaching and what you were saying. And it was remarkable. If I haven't told you already, I just want to say thank you for having been a speaker at the She's Bold Women's Conference. And I'm just so excited, which is why I wanted to kick off this series because, I've been off since the conference. I haven't recorded a podcast. I've just kind of in the season of rest. Just getting things together. And also, of course, just like, we work behind the scenes. There's so much that we're doing that is it truly rest? Probably not. But in some areas we are. And so I wanted to open it up because, if you're listening, this is the month of July. And we wanted to kick off this series with the She's Bold series because I think there was so much that could have still been shared. I think I heard women say it should have been longer. I don't think it was enough. Do this again. Why do I have to wait a year before we do the event? And honestly, that was just a call from God. So remember, I was telling you, I think I told you like last year, around this time last year, I'm gonna, God's calling me to do this. We're supposed to do this in November. And it's like, no, let's put a pause on it. We'll do it in May. And for me, it just surpassed any expectations that I might have had.
Yes.
And so just from hearing you, what did you receive or what did you feel that day?
Yes. So one of the things that I love so much was how open the women were to receiving the impartation. You had women who were desperate and hungry for change. It was not hard trying to get these ladies to receive
Mm,
the information that was given to them.
right.
They were so open, they were so attentive, and you can tell that there were a lot of women in the room who were broken.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt like they finally was in a place where they could hear from other women who were going through the same things they were going through.
Mm,
And so I felt the willingness that a lot of the women had. They were hungry. They were desperate for a change.
yes. I mean,
Mhm.
there was laughter,
Yes,
and then there were no dry eyes. I mean, there was
I
tears,
know.
laughter. There was so much love, and
Yes.
I could feel like just looking around the room,
Mhm.
feel how many women were resonating with what
Yes.
they were hearing that day. And
Yes.
one of the things that I recall that someone had mentioned to me, they were like, wow, LaToya's message really, really impacted me. And so we're
Mhm.
going to talk a little bit about that because you
Yes.
actually shared a lot of your testimony,
Yeah.
coming from California, but, uh, growing up in the foster care system and
Yes.
navigating your way. Uh,
Mhm.
Talk to us a little bit about your journey because I know that there's some listeners on here that don't know your story, that don't know what you
Mhm.
went through. But I will tell you that so many women could resonate with that.
Yes, ma'am. So, a lot of people that were there know that I'm a Los Angeles native. I'm currently here in Houston, Texas. At the age of 4, I entered into foster care with my oldest brother. And we had the opportunity to be raised by powerful, a man and woman of God who raised us the right way. We were in a place where we could have been moved around from home to home, but we wasn't. We
Mm,
remained in the same home up until we were of adult age and we were able to transition out. And so, even though we were in a place where we were not raised by our biological parents due to substance abuse use, we were afforded the opportunity for another chance at life. Even though we were in foster care, I had other siblings who were in foster care as well. Growing up in South Central LA, I experienced a lot. I joined a gang at 14 years old. I started going to a lot of funerals at that point of people who were affiliated with the same gang that I was, and people that I just knew. We were going to funerals on a regular. I seen a lot of things that at my age I probably shouldn't have been able to see,
right.
and that was life changing for me growing up in LA and experiencing some things I experienced. But then, even through all of that, I remember moments in time where I felt rejected. I felt rejected. I felt abandonment. And I didn't know that this seed of rejection and abandonment was starting to manifest.
Mm,
And it didn't produce a harvest until I became an adult. And
right.
so here you are, a 4-year-old child who was placed in foster care because you have a mother who's addicted to drugs, you have a father who's addicted to drugs, and now you're having to be in a home with a bunch of strangers. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to find your way, right? You're trying to find your identity. You're trying to find out, well, who is LaToya? And so I struggled with that as a child growing up, just really trying to find my place in life.
Mhm.
My brother was a part of a gang. He went to jail like when I was in 8th grade. And we were very, very close, up until he went away. And so, I went through high school, transitioned through that. I wasn't a troubled child. I know many people may say, well, you was in the gang and you was troubled, but it was more so of a family thing.
Right.
Anybody who have dealt with rejection or abandonment, you seek that security in community, right? That community can be negative, but you seek that because that is where you feel like you belong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's what it was. I didn't know the dangers of it. I didn't understand what it was doing to my life, but God came in right in the nick of time where he was able to save me, get me through high school, where I didn't have to go to jail. Have I been arrested? Yeah, I was, just doing things that teenagers are doing, but God still had his hands on me. To come from parents who were addicted to drugs and then having an adoptive mother who had structure in the home. We had structure. We had meals every day. I mean, most people, you hear of horror stories of foster care, right? We didn't have that horror story. We had our issues and problems, but it was something that I couldn't ask for anything better, in my life, even now and as an adult. And so seeing these things happen, I was able to go away to college, graduate from, a high school in South Central, and I made it out. Like they say, I made it out the hood. I made it out the hood.
Yeah.
And went to college and graduated. Unfortunately, while I was in college, one of my brothers was murdered. He was in a gang as well. These are family patterns and issues that I'm seeing throughout the bloodline. And so my brother was murdered my senior year in college. And so I had to fly back to Los Angeles for my birth mother at the time to bury my brother due to gang violence. So this has become a lifestyle of things on my bloodline. But God seemed fit to separate me from my bloodline and interject a new bloodline of people that could handle my purpose, my destiny, and my calling, and could push me into my next season. A lot of times we think that the things that we go through in life is to keep us in a place of stagnancy, but sometimes God has to interject and put somebody else in place to push us into our next destiny. And so if I never was placed in a foster home, I would never be where I am today, because these people were able to guide, to cover me even after 18, because when you're in a system, you're emancipated at 18 years old. That's what they call it in LA. You're emancipated. So that means at that point, the foster care system has a right to say, hey, we're done with you. You can go on about your life now. But I had adoptive parents that pushed me through college, allowed me to live with them throughout college, come back and forth home to their house, funded me throughout college, and knew that there was something greater in me that I didn't even know was in myself. But even through that, I still dealt with that rejection. I still, that seed was already planted of rejection, and so, it created a whole different monster. And I say monster, and I'll leave with this, is that it created anger on the inside of me. I was very angry growing up, and would get into fights because I didn't like the thought of having to be vulnerable, be rejected. And then I feel like I had to be my own protector.
Yes.
I didn't know nothing about God. Now, at 4 years old, I was praying to a God I knew nothing about. For some reason, I would just get on my knees and pray at 4 years old. I remember that. But I felt like I had to protect myself because my protection, which was my parents, wasn't there. So here comes this wall, this defense mechanism where I got to be hard and I got to be loud and defensive, because I became my own God in so many ways.
And I'm hearing you, and it's so funny because I had lunch with my mom and my sisters not too long ago. And although I didn't grow up in a foster care system, but I did grow up in a broken home. I had a father who was an alcoholic, who was abusive, verbally, sexually, emotionally abusive. And even though there was, like you were talking about, there was structure there.
Yes.
Because I had a mother and a father. And then at the age of 10, that structure, even though it wasn't the greatest, because, my dad was these things, but it was at the age of 10 that my dad had passed away. My mom became a widow, and my mom didn't know the language. And so that disrupted what
Yes.
structure we did have, which
Mm-hmm.
again, caused that rebelliousness where I felt rejection. I felt like
Yes.
there was no more structure. I felt like,
Mm-hmm.
no one could understand because at the age of 10, children lose, whether you lose a parent, or you're not there, or you're removed from a home and you don't have your parent,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There is still a sense of loss, but as a child, we don't know how to put a name
There you go.
to that because
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what, I mean, it's hard for an adult to process emotion.
Yes.
Now, imagine a child at the age of 10 losing
Mm-hmm.
a father, structure's gone out the window,
Yep.
drastic changes started to happen. And now,
Mm-hmm.
and like you were saying, I wasn't part of a gang, but I found myself with groups of people
Yes.
that, like, for a long time, yeah, I had friends that were female friends, but I always gravitated to the guys.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I thank God that I wasn't a promiscuous child.
Yes.
And it's crazy because you mentioned something, that you were praying to a God that you didn't even know existed. But it's
Mm-hmm.
even in all of what you were sharing in your story reminds me of so much because even myself, I saw how, now reflecting, right? How I saw how God's hand
Mm-hmm.
of protection was there. Like
Yes.
I hung around these guys, but not one of them put their hands on me. Not one
Yes.
of them sexually,
Mm-hmm.
attacked me or to them. I was their like little sister per se,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so now that doesn't mean I wasn't out there doing wrong with them.
Right.
I was.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, it's that sense of having a building up your own family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't know, even at the age of as a teenager, we don't even know what our identity is. And you touched on that. You said, I didn't even know who
Yes.
LaToya was. I don't even know
Right.
who I am because we don't know that. And then when you're a child processing all of these emotions, still trying to
Yes.
figure out, well, who am I? Who do I belong to?
Exactly.
Where do I gravitate to? And
Yes.
just trying to find a way. So we test the waters in everything that we do,
Mm-hmm.
but yet there's a sense of emptiness.
Yes, it
There's
is.
a
I
hole,
realize that. Mm-hmm.
right? There's
Yeah.
a void and there's a hole in us because we know that we have, like me, I had my dad and now I don't have a dad. I have my
Mm-hmm.
mom, but my mom was going through her own things. So then at the age of 14, I'm no longer living with my mom. I'm now living with my grandparents.
Right.
And it was like I felt like I was just another mouth that was fed because I felt like I knew
Mm-hmm.
that they knew that I was there, but I never felt like I was seen.
Exactly. Right.
Right?
It wasn't until I got much older and as I started going through my healing journey and I remember moments I was getting in and out of broken relationships with men. And I would remember many days and nights I would literally cry. I would cry because I would experience so many heartbreaks from men. And I'm like, God, what is it about me? Like what's happening where I cannot seem to find the love,
Hmm.
right? In these
Yes.
relationships, right? I'm compromising though, right? I'm compromising because I'm trying to fill a void, like you said, of this identity of not having these parents, not having these things to tell me. And, there were things that God began to reveal to me as them times were coming. And he said, well, for one, they're not worthy of the love that you have to give. I
Hmm.
heard the spirit clear as day say that. And then he had me go out and reach out to my biological father, to kind of have a conversation with him about how I felt. And
Hmm.
even as I prayed and went throughout my seasons, I began to realize that a man is what gives a young girl her identity. When there's no father in the home that's able to speak to this young girl, there is an absence of who this young girl is. Because when you really think about it as a little girl, you get dressed up and you looking cute, and your dad like, you're beautiful. And look at my baby girl, you're so pretty. And oh, that looks nice. That's the first man that a young girl sees is her father. And when that has been distorted, when there has been compromise, violations, absence, it paints a picture of how you see the opposite sex. And so now you're chasing after something that you never got your whole life. Now, I had a foster dad that was present, and I was considered the spoiled one. But there's another thing that I tell people, even those who are listening, is that there's a difference between having a father who's present and one who's really present. A father can be in a home, but they're not emotionally present. You're just there. You don't communicate with the daughter. You don't say, baby girl, don't do this, don't go there, don't do this. He was there to be a provider, but we didn't have those conversations. We didn't
And
talk about
yeah,
these
no, and
things.
I was going to say, and you're right, because that reminds me again, you're talking about that, a father is pretty much the girl's first experience, right?
Right.
What a man should be. And in my experience, it was rough.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, I discovered that when I was in relationships before, uh, I always gravitated, because that's
Mm-hmm.
what happens. We gravitate to something that's familiar. We gravitate
Yes.
to that father figure that we
Yep.
grew up seeing. And so I
Mhm.
had the tendency to gravitate to men who drank, to men who were
Yep.
verbally abusive, to men who
Yep.
were emotionally abusive, to men
Yep.
who took advantage of me, because that's what I had experienced. And for me, that was familiarity.
Right.
And a lot of people hindsight will look back and like, well, that's not even normal. In our home, that was what looked normal. That was
Yes.
normal in our home. We didn't know that that wasn't normal until I got older, until I
Yes.
realized, right, that
Mhm.
that's not the way it is.
No more.
And it wasn't that I realized it offhand right away. It wasn't until I started to read God's word, and I
Yes.
started to learn and understand what a father is and who
Yes.
he's supposed to be. And that's
Mhm.
when things started to change and things started to, light bulbs started to click up,
Come on. Yeah.
and that's when I started to realize, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Mhm.
This is not the way it's supposed to be,
Yes.
but it
Mhm.
took a journey and all kinds of mistakes and 2 divorces later to
Yes.
realize that,
Yes.
and a lot of people go around the world, thinking, God, what's wrong with me?
Right.
Why do I keep making these mistakes? Why do I keep gravitating to this type of people when
Right.
sometimes we don't even realize that we're magnets also to
Yes.
other people,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you can sense it out. It's like a bloodhound. It's
Mhm.
like a bloodhound, a dog that's able to sniff something out.
Mm.
You can tell when somebody is not healed. You can smell it. You can sense the aroma. And that's how the enemy is, because we know that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So anytime there's an open door where the enemy can come in and access those weak points, he's going to do it. And so we know that just like the scripture says that, after you've been delivered, and if you don't heal, those spirits come back 7 times stronger, and it searches out an empty space, right? And if that place is empty, it's going to come. It's going to come 7 times harder.
Yes.
And so this is why you see women in cycles, constant cycles, because it hasn't been swept clean. You haven't been healed. And so these spirits can come back, and they come back stronger because the enemy can smell. You can be on your way to purpose. I'm telling you, I've been through this even while in ministry, on your way to purpose. And if there's an open place in you that's not healed, the enemy is going to search out those
Oh
places.
my gosh. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And that's why, when people say, you should you need to let things out so that you can heal. But I'm going to say something that most people don't hear often, and that's even through healing, it still
Mhm.
hurts.
Yes.
Healing hurts
Yes. Yes.
because we tried so hard
Yep.
to suppress those feelings. We tried so hard to try to
Yep.
hide it, sweep it under the rug, whatever
Yep.
it is that we're trying to do so that it does not resurface us
Yes.
because we don't want to experience that. But the minute we start healing, guess what? Those things
Mhm.
are going to start
Yes.
resurfacing up,
Yes.
right? It's
Yes.
just like the trash that finds its way from under the couch, right? It
Yes.
gets on our nerves, right? But that's what happens is that
Yeah.
those things. That's why when people, um, when they start drinking or when they're doing drugs, they're doing these things because there's some hurt that they're trying to mask.
Suppress. Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
That they
Mhm.
don't want to deal with. They're trying
Yes.
to avoid it because it hurts. It hurts
Mhm.
to talk about it. It hurts to do this. But then when they start allowing for God to get that healing, yes,
Mhm.
it hurts. But the
Yes.
thing about it is that it hurts. It starts to hurt less and less and
Yes. And that's
whereas
when you know you're healing. Yeah.
yes, that's when you know you're healing.
That's when you
Yeah, it's
know.
gonna hurt at the
Mhm.
beginning. It's just like when you
Yes.
suffer an injury, you go through surgery, whatever the case, that hurts. While
Yes.
you're healing,
Mhm.
that hurts.
Yes, it
Because you
does.
still feel the bruises, you still feel the
Yeah.
pain, you still feel the stitches, you still feel what, after you come from anesthesia, you
You can
start to
still
feel
feel it.
all of those things, right?
Mhm.
But in that healing, it's healing. Yes, it hurts at the beginning, but then it starts to hurt less. And then what's
Mhm.
left is just the scar,
Right.
not to remind you of all the hurt that you've endured,
Mhm.
but to remind you of how you've been able to overcome
Yes.
things. And
Yes.
that's one of the things that I loved about your story because you touched on a lot of those things. You touched on, as you were healing, which is going to lead me to this too, because you also experienced another kind of hurt.
Right.
You lost your mom.
Right.
And I remember when I met you, we met because we worked
Mhm.
together.
Right,
I
right, right.
remember working together, and it was so funny because I was like, I would see you, and you were working as our security guard, and you were
Yeah.
writing your book. I
Yeah.
remember those days you were sitting there, and you would just be writing your book. You would be writing, writing, writing. I don't
Yeah.
know what you were doing. You was just typing away, girl. You were just typing away.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until later on when we realized that you had wrote this beautiful book and it was
Yes.
talking about that.
Yeah.
And how did from having a foster mother from,
Mhm.
I know that didn't you weren't with your biological mother, but talk to me a little bit about the
Mhm.
differences or perhaps even similarities of not even
Mhm.
having your biological mom being separated from her and then now the woman that raised you
Mhm.
losing her.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, in 2018 is when I lost my adopted mother, and I lost her in a way where I think most people probably would have been on medication. Because she laid in my arms and took her last breath.
Mm.
And so there was some blood that was shed. And so I was there alone with her in the home when she passed. And so to have that envisioned from a woman who raised you from four, and now she's taking her last breath, and you're holding her, until paramedics get there, it was very traumatizing. But what I do know was that it was God, because even in the midst of that happening, I didn't lose my mind. I didn't lose my sense of um, moving forward. What it taught me was God prepared me, because even once her diagnosis came about, which was cancer, we called it in stage 4, and they were just pretty much saying that we're just reserving her life until it's time. And
Mm.
I'll never forget when I left her at the hospital, and I went home and I cried, and I was in the shower, and the Holy Spirit said to me, "She has given you everything you need to survive to this point."
Wow.
And I was 33 and I'm 41 now. And she said, and the Holy Spirit said it clear as day. She has given you everything you need to survive. And that is the truth. Everything that I needed from that point on, she had given it to me. So I had already prepared myself for it. Having to have lost her, it allowed me to really see the importance of how important it is to have a mother in your life.
Yes.
Because when she passed, I had to figure out some things on my own with a child, because she helped me out a lot with my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
from food to clothing her to picking her up, while all I had to do was go to work and come home. And so now having to readjust that. And then that was my go-to person. Whenever I hit hard problems, decisions, she was rational her decisions. She would hear you through. She wasn't an emotionalized person. And so a lot of times when people see that I'm not, as they may look at me as hard, the way that she raised us was very rational. Like, okay, I understand you're going through this, you're hurting, but you're going to get through this and we're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You can cry your heart out and she's not going to drop a tear. Not that she's not empathizing with you. She was just rational about not staying stuck.
Oh, yes.
Right. And
Yes.
so when she passed, that's like a pillar in the community, right? We have pillars in the community. And so what kept me going was the fact that she was never a person that gave up.
Mm.
She was never a person that gave up. And so then that surpassed, and I have my biological mother that's still living, and having to rebuild that relationship, right? And go through getting to know her more as she's getting to know me more. We went through our bumps and roads and ups and downs, and the things that she dealt with having guilt. And people know I love my biological mother. People know I've posted her on social media, things of that nature. So I always felt like, and this is just me, and I pray that this will help somebody, that even though your biological parent wasn't there to raise you, they brought you into this world.
Yes.
They brought you into this world. And so she brought an anointed woman into this world to not only save and help people, but to even help her along the way. And so I never take for granted. I don't try to belittle my mother. You have some kids out here that can be very cruel, right? Because they're bitter, right? They're bitter. They're angry. Why did you leave me? Why did you do this? And that's not what God wanted me to do.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted me to love her at the place of where she was at,
Mm.
because she too had her own trauma. My mother's story is worse than mine. People mouth would drop if they knew my mother's whole life story. People would think like, this cannot be real. She experienced her own trauma. So people are only able to give you what they have.
Yes.
Hear me when I say this.
Yes.
People got to understand, how can you give me something that I never had?
Mm-hmm.
How can you expect something that a person didn't even get themselves?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think a lot of children do not show their parents grace.
Yeah. That's crazy that you said that, because I was just, like I said, I was having that conversation with my mom and I was telling her, and God allowed us to have this conversation, which came very unexpectedly, right? Because I was just going to go have lunch with my mom and I hadn't seen her since November, which is crazy.
Mhm.
I don't live far from her, but life gets in the way all the time. Every time we try to
Yeah.
talk something. But that day that we had lunch, my twin sister was there, and God gave us that space to talk about that, uh, because I was able to share with my mom those
Mhm.
feelings that I was feeling, and that sense of abandonment, how I felt
Mhm.
rejected, how I felt abandoned, how I felt alone,
Mhm.
without her. All those years, sometimes we had gone a season of a span of 6 years and we hadn't spoken to each
Wow.
other. And
Wow.
and it was during those most challenging times in my life. And so there was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of pain. And one of the things that my mom,
Mhm.
and my mom said, I am so sorry. I am so
Jesus.
sorry. She says, because I didn't know. I didn't
Right.
know what was going on with you. And then in me sharing that, mom was able to share with me her story.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because
Mm-hmm.
if we allow ourselves without that hurt, without that feeling, but just sit and allow ourselves to ask questions and really listen without
Yes.
interruption,
Mm-hmm.
get to hear what they experienced,
Yes.
and to understand. And so I think it's easier now when we become moms ourselves or when we become
Yes.
parents, we no one gives us, there is no instruction manual on how to be a parent. And
Exactly.
first child, that's your first time being a parent. Even as it
Exactly.
gets older, that all of
Yes.
this is a brand new experience. Every single day, it's a brand new experience because that's not something that we
Was taught.
was taught,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so these are the things that she wasn't taught herself. She grew up
Right.
in a very hard home herself. So she was only giving or providing us
With what she had.
what
Yeah.
she had and what she
Yes.
learned. And that's when we start walking with Christ and we start allowing for that healing to start taking place, then we understand what it truly means to have a forgiving heart, what it really means to forgive them, uh,
Yeah.
because they're not perfect.
Yeah.
They were only doing the best that they could with
That they
what
knew.
they had.
Yes.
And so when that happened, mom and I were able to embrace ourselves and we were able to really fully talk. And that was when
That's
I was
good.
able to forgive her,
Wow.
which in turn allowed me to forgive myself because I was
Right.
for not forgiving her, but it was just, I needed to understand. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the hardest things for women when we have moms, not only about the dads, but even as a mom, because that's the person that's going to teach us about how to nurture, how to,
Yeah.
you know, uh, be rational, how to do all of those things. But
Yes.
we themselves don't know how to do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. There are some that will be for years and years angry. And so when you were sharing your story at the conference, there was a young lady, there was actually two young ladies there, and their
Mm-hmm.
mother um is has been on drugs and has been drinking,
Okay.
and uh her presence as a mom was not fully there. They were
Right.
raised by their grandparents also, but
Okay.
they went through hunger, they went through all these things, and they felt like
Mm-hmm.
their mom didn't care and stuff like that. And then years later,
Mm-hmm.
what we learned was this their grandmother, their biological grandmother, passed away. And their
Mm-hmm.
mom never, ever received a hug from her own mom. She was
Wow.
out there chasing after her mom to get the things that she wasn't even doing for her own children because she was so focused on trying to be loved by her own mother.
Wow.
Didn't realize that she was doing the same thing to her
For
children.
her kids.
Her
Yeah.
mind, she thought she was, and she really wasn't. And all of these years later, all she wanted was her mom's love. And
Mm.
it, but now that they're older, they come to realize, like, wow, mom was trying to give us what she never received because
Yeah.
she didn't know how to give.
And still looking for love herself. Mm.
Yes. And it's
Yes.
and it's crazy because we all have this thing, which is what I love about God's word, because he talks about how when we get to know him, how we start to break those generational curses,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how it begins with us. When we start
Yes.
talking about him, we can break that. It does not have to continue to keep going. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things that you started to do, was you started to
Yeah.
break generational curses. You started to pour yourself into God's word, and you went out there and started making differences and changes so that you could be used to help others, especially the youth, because you work
Right.
with the youth in your church,
Yes.
right? You
Yeah.
pastor the youth, and then you
Mm.
also became a Christian counselor. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did that come about? And when did you know that this is where God was calling you, and that the youth ministry is where God was having you in for this time?
Mhm. Yeah. So The church where I'm at, I am apostolic, which means that we believe in the operation of all fivefold. We believe in the prophetic gifts, evangelism, pastoral, apostolic, and teachers and elders. And so I oversee the young adults at Rebirth Apostolic Ministries. And it took me a while to get to this place of where I'm at, because I've been through so much in the rejection aspect of a thing. I didn't really quite know where I fit in at. This is leading up to your question you asked me. And so I knew I was an encourager. I knew I had the ability to encourage people. I knew that I had influence. And so I did know that when I would speak, people would listen.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did know growing up, right? And so I just thought, maybe I could be a lawyer one day, right? I think I can go to school and become a lawyer. So that's what I thrive to do. I could be a lawyer. I can debate. Maybe I can do some politics. This is just what I'm thinking. But as I began to move forward and realize that's not what he's called me to do, I said, okay. And so as I began to see that there were opportunities to become certified as a Christian counselor, it came second nature to me, because I was counseling people for free when we really think about it.
Yeah.
Because people were coming to me asking me for advice. Even friends growing up would call and ask me for advice. People in church, family will come to me and ask me for advice. And I'm just thinking like, well, Lord have mercy, what is going on? And so it became second nature for me in the aspect of counseling, because I had already had it in me. It was already on the inside of me to encourage, to help people figure out what direction they need to go to. Now, the thing about it is, the real question is, how did I know that I was called to young adults? Because that was something for years, even with youth and young adults, to be honest with you, every place that I've went, even with churches, they always put me with youth. And I'm like, why do they keep putting me with these youth? Like, I don't have the patience, Lord. And then here we are with the young adults. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Everywhere I went. And what I've realized through these moments of counseling and dealing with young adults and youth is that they are teachable. They're teachable because they want to know answers. The thing about adults is that we think we already got it figured out. We got this pride, we got this religion going on. We think, hey, you can't tell me nothing. I'm an adult. Mm-hmm. Young adults, as long as you are consistent and they trust you, they will yield to you. Yes. Even with youth, if you're consistent and you have built trust with them, which is a rapport, a relationship, they will listen to you. They have to know that you love them. They have to know that it's genuine, because kids can see right through if you're not genuine. And so it came easy for me with the counseling, and it started to become easy with youth, and it started to become easy with the young adults, because I was genuinely drawn to where they were at in these seasons of their life right now, because I know it was like to be in that place. And so it came second nature. Counseling is something that I think that I've always done.
Yes, I can agree. Because I'm there myself, I've been there, and I was that person, and I felt like I don't even have it together myself, and you ask me for questions, you're asking me for, and one of the things, it was so funny, because I remember in high school, they didn't have all the things that they have today in these high schools. Right. I'm like,
yes,
I wish they would have had all this stuff. I probably would have done something,
Mm-hmm.
But, and so. But I remember that counselors back in the day would have you do like career assessments. They would have you do, where do you think your career could be or whatever? And they have you answer 50 million questions, whatever. And I remember my assessment, and I remember it as clear as day. And I remember that it had social worker, it had counseling, it had working with animals. It had like medical field, all of those things and stuff, anything that had to do with caring for other people.
Wow.
And so, of course, that was high school. So I thought, okay, so I started going to college, whatever. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna be. I said, I think occupational therapy is where I want to go. So I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I'll do that and stuff. And it was so hard passing science classes and stuff because it was just hard. And
Mhm.
but I knew that speaking was something that I was gifted in. I knew that I could go and talk to people, that I could speak. People needed somebody to advocate for them. I knew how to do that because I'd been doing that my whole life with my mom. I've been having to advocate
Mhm.
for her. I had to advocate for my sister. I had to advocate for
Yes.
family members. So I was always in that uh, place of advocating and receiving and getting resources to help other people, giving
Mhm.
information.
Mhm.
And that was just something that came naturally, like I
Yes.
knew how to retain information. So if somebody else need, oh yeah, you know what? I remember such and such place does this,
Mhm. Mhm.
but life happened. And so it took me in different routes, but I got to experience going to therapy.
Yes.
Then later on going to school, building up a community,
Mhm.
being vulnerable in certain places, asking people for help when I didn't, that was a very hard thing for me to do, was ask
Yeah.
anybody for anything,
That part.
because I
Yeah.
felt like, I've been through all this, like what can they do for me type of mentality. But I
That part.
knew that I needed help. And God showed me and humbled me in that aspect of teaching me how to start asking for help. Because even the hardest, toughest person needs help. And
Needs to have.
so then when I went back to college, now here I am in my 30s, a single mom going back to school. Um, I was going for business management.
Mhm.
And when I was working at a place and they laid me off, by this
Mhm.
point I already had my degree. Well, lo and behold, God opened up the door for me to work for a nonprofit organization, and here I am becoming
Yeah.
a coach and a career coach. And then with those career coaches, I've been coaching all this way. And what do? I advocate for people. I
Mhm.
provide them with the
Yeah.
resources that
Sure
they
do.
need. I have to build rapport and confidence. They have to. So it's like God said already, He showed me what I was going to be,
Mhm.
and I yet did not know that that's what I was going to be. All this took place just for
Mhm.
Him to lead me and put me back. And that reminds me of Proverbs 3, 5, and 6,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding.
Mhm.
Ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your path. And in all of those circumstances that I was going on through life, I had to learn how to trust in Him and not
All of
depend
that.
on what I thought I needed or try to make it my way on how I
Yep.
thought it was supposed to be. But I needed to acknowledge Him on
Yes.
all of the things that He had me going through and the
Yes.
path that I was walking in, so that He can redirect me into the purpose that He had already called me to
Mhm.
be in, and for me to
Mhm.
stay on it. And that's
Yeah.
hard because when we don't know what our calling is, or when we miss that mark of what our calling is supposed to be, God will allow for you to live all of these things in your life, but He'll get you right back where you need to be,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And that
Everything happened
that
for a
to me
purpose.
is, yes,
Mhm.
everything is for a purpose. And that's what I
Mhm.
saw a lot when I started to really get to know who you were and stuff, because
Mhm.
you went through, and it's just amazing how God kept us in touch, you know,
I
how He
know.
kept us connected and kept us in
That's so
touch.
funny.
You writing your book, and then not only one book, you wrote two books,
Three.
three, three
Yeah,
books,
three.
three
Mhm.
books. You wrote
Yeah.
3 books, and then you got your counseling certification. Was Yeah, your counseling
Yeah.
certification.
Yeah.
Yet God kept us connected and
Yes.
kept us on this path together, not knowing that all of those years ago, when you were working as a security guard, working through all of these things, and
Yes.
me working in that, nonprofit organization, doing career coaching, how He was going to
Mhm.
use that
Yes.
opportunity for us to get to know each other,
Mhm.
but to stay connected and plugged in with each other,
Mhm.
to the point
Mhm.
where you came and spoke at the She's Bold Women's Conference, and
Yes.
how we have been in touch with each other all of
Mhm.
years, because still neither one of us knew each other's story.
I
But God
know.
said,
Yes.
I'm going to connect you two ladies because
Yep.
something powerful is going to happen when you two get to share your story together,
Yes.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I love about what you do, because your message, your story, the things that you've gone through is a source of empowerment to other women to say,
Mm-hmm.
life is going to throw those punches at you,
Yes.
but you can still.
But it's how you move forward after that. Giving up was never an option for me.
Mhm.
I mean, I went through a tremendous, horrific divorce, betrayal, pain. I mean, it was the lowest of the lowest. Addicted to drinking every day, all day. I have been to the lowest in those areas, but giving up was never an option for me. And the reason being is because I said to myself, that means if I give up, that means that my enemy is going to win.
Mm.
And I would picture the people who I knew was on an assignment to take me out. And I knew that if I gave up, that the enemy will win against my life. And so people say, you have this fight in you that just won't die. And I said, because I refuse to lay down and die.
Mm.
And I tell people that you have to have a nevertheless on the inside of you.
Yes.
No matter what comes your way, the boldness. I used to fear being bold because how it would pose a threat to people in atmospheres that I would go into. And I would see where I felt like I needed to shrink back because I didn't want to offend anybody, right? And so it was that rejection, right? Those seeds that were planted of where they'll reject me, And so for years I played it safe. I played it safe. And that's when God began to show me, and I had people come along the way that prophesied that God is going to use you in an unusual way to bring those in that's never going to step foot in the church.
Wow.
But you'll be able to have a voice that will impact them. So embrace who you are,
Yeah.
100%.
Yes, and that, yes, I can completely.
Mm-hmm.
I just, yes. And I'm saying that, and I'm pausing it because I'm receiving that right now.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
receiving that for myself right now, because there
Mm-hmm.
are times where still I struggle with that. I struggle,
Yes,
and I start to put myself in a position where I shrink myself,
yes.
that fear of still being rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And to this very day, that is still an area where God is still
Mm-hmm.
working on me. That's why, I can resonate with what you're saying. And that's why I was
Yes.
pausing, because God was telling me that's for you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
for you. I wanted
yeah.
you to hear that. I needed you to hear that
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
receive that, and
Yeah.
it's just an acknowledgement of saying, wow, even right now in this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
we're still receiving messages that God has given us, right?
Yes.
And when we first started this, we opened up with prayer and we said, Lord, allow for us to receive what we need to receive out of this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And that right there is a testament that even I myself, uh,
Mm-hmm.
am still being, in that area of receiving, because,
Yes.
yes, I may be doing all of these things and I may be going, around, but there are still moments where I still find myself shrinking in
Mm-hmm.
place, so that
Yes.
I don't come off as,
Yes.
I don't know, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
is in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I want to thank you, because that right there hit home for me. I
Yes.
really received that. And so,
Yeah.
LaToya, with your books, with, you do speaking engagements, you
Mhm.
speak, you got there. If somebody wanted to connect with you, or they wanted to receive your services, where
Yes.
could they go to either get your book you, or
Mhm.
even just receive counseling from you? Where could they go? How could they find you?
So for one, I do have my email address, which is booklatoyachrisman@gmail.com. If you're interested in, speaking engagements, because I am in the place where I'm revamping my website at this point. So book LaToyaChristman@gmail.com for like speaking engagements. If you want to order books, anointing oil, sweaters, things of that nature, counseling services, you can go to www.LaToyaChristman.com. My first and last name.com.
Okay.
www.LaToyaChristman.com
And
for those services.
Yeah, and I'll have all this in the show notes and stuff. So if you
Okay.
I want to. So LaToya, what do you want to leave our listeners today from everything that we spoke about today? What would you like to leave to our listener today?
Mhm. As you go through hard seasons, which we all will, because it speaks of in Ecclesiastic 3:3 and 4, 3 through 4, that there's a season for everything under the sun. And so we're going to go through hard seasons in our lives. But the thing of the matter is that will we still trust God in the process? There will be moments where we will feel like we're not good enough as women. We're wearing many hats, but will you still persevere in these hard seasons of your life? Do you believe that God has a purpose in store for your life? The thing that I do know is that the date of when you were born was a start date, and the date that you die is the end date. But the real question is, what are you going to do in the in between? There's a dash that we have there on our tombstone when we pass.
Yeah.
And the question is, what will you do in the in between while you're here in the earth? What will people say about you? Will they say that you are a person that is an overcomer? Will they say that you're a person that you just gave up? What does your in between say while you're still here in the earth? And so we want to make sure that our name resounds in the earth, that even as we leave, we can go to Amazon and we can find Mariana's book. Even after I pass, you can go look for LaToya. After you move on to glory, they can go and find you because you've left an imprint in the earth.
Yes.
You left an imprint in the earth. What do you want people to say about you when you're gone? How are you showing up day in and day out?
Wow. Wow. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Yes.
We
Wow.
want to leave an imprint in the earth,
Yes.
a change.
Well, listen, I want to just say thank you so much for taking the
Yes,
time out
ma'am.
of your day today to just be on here and having this conversation with me today. I hope that if you're listening and this message resonated with you, again, I'm going to have the links for you to be able to just, get connected with LaToya, or at least, follow her. She's on Facebook, she's on
Yes.
Instagram, she's on TikTok. She gives a message. I like your Freedom Friday
Freebie Fridays. I'm starting that back up. I'm starting my Freebie Fridays back
I
up.
listen to it every Friday. I look forward to it. So I hope y'all also follow along as well. So,
Yes.
and if this is a message that you absolutely resonated with and you enjoyed, I ask you as a listener to please share this message, share this episode, like us, tag us, share it, and pass it along. Don't hoard this information. Give it to somebody else
Yes.
who may need to hear it and say, hey, you know what? I really need you to hear what this lady has to say, and
Yes.
be on the lookout, because we do have Pastor LaToya's speech from the She's Bold Women's Conference that we're going to be sharing on YouTube. And so you'll get to hear her powerful message. It was a powerful message that was shared. And there were so many, like I said, there were so many women that resonated with your message. And
Yes.
I just want to say thank you so much. And I feel so blessed and honored to be not only your friend, but your sister in Christ. And
Yes.
also just being able to share platforms together. And that to me means a lot. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And so, amiga and girlfriends, I just want to say thank y'all so much for tuning in, for listening today.
Yes.
And be on the lookout for more to come, because LaToya is busy and there's going to be so much more that you'll get to see from her, and I look forward to that. So with that being
Yes.
said, thank y'all so much, and I'll see y'all next week.
Yes. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mommy on a Mission podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your amigas. And before you go, If you're looking to dive deeper into healing, self-discovery, and walking in confidence, be sure to grab a copy of my book, Mommy on a Mission, A Guide Towards Healing, Self-Discovery, and Walking in Confidence, available now on Amazon. Stay connected with me on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Mommy on a Mission Podcast and on Facebook at Mommy on a Mission. If you're considering working with a coach but aren't sure if you're ready, send me a DM and I will send you a free gift to help you get started on your journey. Until next Saturday, keep shining and remember, the power is within you. Adios, amigas.